Hi all, welcome to educators.com. I'm Harish, software engineer. In this session, we'll be learning about what are the events and how we attach event handlers to these events and what are the arguments will be passed to these event handlers. So by end of this session, you should be able to understand like what are the events actually in JavaScript and what are the different ways to attach the event handlers to the events and how to handle this, how to use the properties of the which have been passed to this event handlers. Okay, so let's start with the events. Events are something that happens in your page, like it can be the keyboard event or the mouse event or page load event or the resizing of the page or the scrolling within the page, or it can be anything change or anything, any movement or anything over the page will be triggering some kind of event over this page. So events will trigger the event handlers which are registered for a DOM element or window. So let's say if you want to do something when some event occurs, like when there is a click over the button, you want to do something, or you want to show some pop-up message saying an information or warning to the user. So how you can do that? You can do that using the event handlers. So this event, like when there is an event for this, like click or any kind of event over this page or a DOM element, it will first trigger the event handlers. Okay. An important thing is we can register multiple event handlers for a single DOM event. Like there is a button, you can register many event handlers for the click event over this button. Okay. So coming to event handlers. Event handlers are the methods which will be called when a certain event happens. So what will be the post-processing logic which will be doing something when there is an event occurs will be written within this event handlers. Okay, so this will be called when a certain event happens. Like if you register this event handler for a particular event like click event, this event handler will be called when there is a click event happens. Okay, so event handlers can be attached in the three ways. First thing is using event attributes. So here in this example you can check that we have added this event handler to the onClick attribute of this button element. So when there is a click over this button, it will call the show message handler. Okay, so this is one way of adding the event event handlers to the DOM element, and the second is through HTML DOM. So how we can do this through HTML DOM? First we will take the reference of the HTML element and then add that event handler to the onClick property or any event type property of that DOM element. So this is second way of binding the event handlers. Third is using addEventListener method of a DOM or a window, anything. So first in this example you can check that I'm taking the reference of the button element and then adding the event listener for the click event. Here addEventListener accepts three parameters. First is the event type and the second is handler. Third is the use capture value. Event type is a type of the event like click or mouse over or anything. Handler is the function which you want to be called when this event happens, and that is a use capture. If you mention this as false, it will be executing in the bubble phase. This means, like let's say we have three nested divs. When there is event over the child div, it will be propagating the event to the parent div, and then it will propagate the event to the parent div. So here In the JavaScript, we have two phases of executing the events. First is the bubbling phase and the capturing phase. Bubble phase, bubbling phase will execute the events from bottom to top. Like from if there is event within the child element, it will execute from the child to the parent. Whereas in the capturing phase, it will be executing from the parent to child. By default, here it is false. Okay. If you mention it as true, it will be executing in the capturing phase. Here, the event handlers will be called in an order. As I mentioned before that you can attach many event handlers. Whatever be the event handlers which are registered for this given event, those will be called in a sequential way. Okay. So coming to removeEventListener method. As we have an addEventListener method to add event handler to the event type, we also have the removeEventListener method to remove the handler for this given event type. Okay, the syntax is target once again. Yeah, the syntax is target dot remove event listener event type handler and the use capture. So this remove event listener method accepts three parameters as similar to add event listener method. But the main important thing which you need to take care is when you using the capture value. Let's say you register the add event listener, the listener for a given event in two phases by passing the use capture value as false as well as true. So when you use this remove event listener, you should use it as twice, using the false value first time and then the true value. Because if you register the listener using the true value and then when you remove event listener using the false value, that will not impact the event listener registered over this event type. Okay, so you should be very careful when you use this capture value. So coming to dispatch event method, apart from the user actions, we can also trigger the events. Trigger in the sense dispatching the events explicitly from the code itself. Like here in the example syntax, you can check that we have a target dot dispatch event and the event type. Target can be any DOM element, and over the DOM element we are calling the dispatch event method by passing the event type. Event type can be any click or mouse over like that. So the return value will be false if one of the event handler has called the event of prepend default method, or else it will return as true. Okay, so by this you can be able to know whether the event handlers have called prevent default method or not. Okay, so coming to event arguments. So when an event handler is been called, it will pass the argument object to the event handler. So the argument contains a number of properties. So let's say check it out some of the properties. First one is the type, the name of the event. So it contains the value of the type of event, like on click or mouse, also on what kind of event is been traced. Target, the element on which the target has fired, like on which DOM element this event has happened. Client X and client Y, it contains the coordinates of the pointer during this event. Like when this event has happened, what are the coordinates of this mouse pointer? Timestamp, it returns the time of the event that is being created. Like that's when the event is being created, it returns the timestamp of that event time. So it returns the value in milliseconds. Prevent default method, as I mentioned before, this is used to stop the default action for a given event. So coming to stop propagation, it is used to stop the propagation of this event whether to the top or to the bottom, that means in the capturing or the bubbling phases. Okay, so these are some of the arguments which are passed to the event handler when a certain event has been traced. Okay. Let's flip to bracket servo. So here, first check with the event attributes. So here first let's create a button and assign a onClick attribute with a value as show message. That's a function, which is a function. And let's name the button as show message. Okay. Now let's define a function called show message, which will print the message saying hello world to the log, or let's do it at an alert. So hello world, or let's say the button is clicked. Okay. So let's check this out. So here, as you can check that I want click of this button, I am able to see the pop-up. So this means that when I click the button is calling the show message function, which is attached as event handler for this onClick event. Okay. So this is how it works in the event attributes. Now check with the through HTML DOM. Okay. So let's remove this event attribute and let's declare an ID for this button. Let's say button 1, and now let's try to get the reference in the script. Document dot get element by ID, the button 1, and let's assign the show message handler to this onClick property. Okay. Now let's check this. So here you can check that even it works for the HTML DOM binding. So when we click on the button, we are able to see the alert pop-up. So this is how it will work through the HTML DOM. Now let's check with the add event listener attribute. So this is just like a property for that DOM element, add event listener. And as we are working on the click event, so let's have the click and then the handler. Okay. Now let's check this out. So here you can check that even it works for the add event listener method property. So if you bind through add event listener also, it works fine. So now check the remove event listener method. So as we are able to attach the event listener, now try to remove the event listener. But let's remove this event listener, or call this event listener remove event listener method within the handler itself. That means like once it has been called, it will never be called from the next time. Okay. So let's copy this simply and just add this in this handler. But okay, remove event listener. That's it. Now let's check it out. So at first it has shown the pop-up. Now let's click on the button at second time. So here you can check that we are unable to see the pop-up. Why? It's because we have removed the event listener in the handler itself. So since it will be called only once, and then from the next time as the event listener is removed, it will never be called. So this is how the remove event listener method works for the events. Now let's try to dispatch the event from the JavaScript code instead of the user manually raising the event. Okay. So let's try to add the event listener first at the top. Okay, for this method, and let's try to remove this event listener. And now let's create an event. As we are working on the click event, let's try to create the mouse event, which will accept the value as click. Okay, and now let's try to dispatch the event for this button by ID, and button 1 dot dispatch event. Okay, so now let's check whether this dispatch event works or not. Yeah, here you can see the pop-up. So why the pop-up is being shown in the page load itself is because we have added the code in the JavaScript directly. That means not within any function scope or anything. So as a JavaScript is read by the browser and it passes from the top to bottom, it will go on executing whatever it sees. So that's why it exits the first line, and then the second, and then the third line, which will be dispatching the event over this DOM element. So this is how it works for the dispatch for the buttons and the events. So this is how you need to add as event listeners, and then remove the event listeners and dispatch the events for a given DOM element. Okay. So that's all from this session. Thank you.